Esteem and honor to the Most High Yah by way of Yahushua HaMashiach this day. Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. And you will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men, but I know you, that you have not the love of Elohim in you. I come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe which receive honor one from another, and not the honor that comes from Elohim only? Then Exodus 22 and 22, you shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child, if thou afflict them in any wise. And they cried all unto me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widowed, and your children fatherless. So, with that being said, Deuteronomy 27 and 19. Let's look at what another location in the law speaks about fatherless children. What will happen to you if you do this to a fatherless child? I guess we can pull the strict Hebrew definition for fatherless child just on general principle, even though I know that is quite self-explanatory. But for just for thoroughness, we will do so. The Hebrew word for fatherless child is yatham, and that word is an orphan or a fatherless child. The unused root meaning to be lonely or a bereaved person. A bereaved person. Also, after Deuteronomy 27, we'll go to Deuteronomy 24. If I can actually get into Deuteronomy and stop skipping over it. 27 and 17. And it says, well, actually 19. Cursed be he that pervert the judgment of the stranger, fatherless, and widow, and all the people shall say Amen. So again, we talked about the stranger the other day. We know Mashiach relates to the stranger as well. But he says if you pervert the judgment of the fatherless. Well, let's look at perverting the judgment of the fatherless. And let's see what that means. Now there's other aspects in the law as it pertains to dealing with the fatherless and the widow and other precepts and the stranger, and we will not be touching those this night. Not tonight. We'll deal with the future time in the context of it deals with what they'll be dealing with. But when we look at what the word pervert means, and it simply means, the word is natah, and it means to turn or to incline or an influence, to extend, to thrust aside, to thrust away, or to stretch out or to spread out, things of that nature. But literally what we sit back to look at it is in the context of this particular precept, it is to turn away or to incline or to thrust away. So you're turning around, sitting back, and you're trying to thrust away what is correct from the fatherless. Let me pull the Hebrew word up for afflict, because I grievously neglected to mention that word, and that's my apologies for that. That word for afflict is anah, and you know that it is to be oppressed, or to be humbled, or to be afflicted, or to be downcast, or to be humiliated. So if you humiliate any orphan, and you know what an orphan is somebody who ain't got no parents for whatever reason. You don't necessarily have, your parents don't necessarily have to die to make you to be an orphan, but usually that's the case. Your parents die, that's what makes you an orphan. So when we look at a fatherless child, you cannot do this to a fatherless child. You cannot afflict them. You cannot turn aside their judgment. You can't do any of these things. Let's look at Deuteronomy 24 and 17. And after Deuteronomy 24 and 17, we'll go to Exodus chapter 23. We'll hit this Exodus 23 a little early. I know he said we're going to go by this stuff precept by precept, and we shall. But at the same time, we cannot go through this stuff in a vacuum and be like, well, we have to stay rigidly to this, because if there's other places in the law that we have to go to before we've got to them to be able to manifest that point, then that is what has to be done. If this cannot be done in a vacuum. Listen when he tells this, and he tells you this again. Thou shalt not pervert the judgment of the stranger, nor the fatherless, nor take a widow's raiment to pledge. But thou shalt remember that thou was a bondman in Mizraim, and Yahuwah thy Elohim redeemed thee. Thence, therefore, I command thee to do this thing. And when thou cut down thy harvest in the field and hast forgotten, now we didn't dealt with that before we can go through all that. But he said that you need to remember that you were a bondman. So you need to remember that when you're dealing with the fatherless, the stranger, or the widow. And if you pay close attention, in Yahuwah's eyes, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow are in the same category. We know a widow is a woman whose husband has died. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at this here, you're looking at somebody who doesn't have anyone to protect them. That's pretty much what you go by. If you're a father's child, I mean, you don't have a father to protect you, to watch over you. You're a widow, you don't have a husband. If you're a stranger, you don't have particular rights in the land. So you're someone who can be easily exploited. Easily exploited. So he's telling you, you better not afflict and oppress someone who doesn't have anyone to stand up on their behalf. Let's look at Deuteronomy 10 and 18, and let's see what he meant to be known that he will be the one to stand up on their behalf. 10 and 17. We'll make it 10 and 12, just on general principle. Deuteronomy 10 and 12 on general principle. And now, Yasharal, what doth Yahuwah thy Elohim require of thee, but to fear Yahuwah thy Elohim? So remember this. This is what Yahuwah requires, that you fear him. This is what he requires. That means a reverence, an honor, and a respect. This is what he requires. To walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve Yahuwah thy Elohim with all thy heart and with all thy soul. So what does that take us back? If we take us back to walking in all his ways, that takes us back to what we looked at in Psalms 119 about Baruch are those who are undefiled in the way, who seek his testimonies with all their heart. Because if you walk in all his ways, that means you walking in the rock, which means you walking in the pathway to the highest that covers sins, because you sought him with the whole heart. Because that's the key thing. He just sat back and said to serve. He said to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul, which that's going to turn back to be an application and measurement of faith, which extends past all the things that a majority of our people who are in this earth this day are speaking of. You know what I'm saying? Because if you serving this man with the whole heart and whole soul, it takes us back to what we talked about before. You have given yourself over unto him. Because this is what he said he requires of you. He requires of you three things. He requires the reverence and respect, which you should take you back to Hebrews 5 when it said that Mashiach was heard and that he feared. So that means he had the reverence and respect for his father, because he said in Malachi, if I be a father, where is my fear? And if I be a master, where is my honor? You could not tell me that this is your father and you do not respect or reverence him. I just told somebody this other day. When I used to be in the street, just talking to dudes, I remember a dude told a dude, he said, why would I want to serve your God when you don't fear him? See, that's what some of y'all probably, I done told y'all that before. Y'all like to try to put people on to the word, but you don't fear your God, so you expect other people to. How are they going to respect someone you don't respect? That's like you telling somebody to respect your mama, but you disrespect her. Or to respect your lady, but you disrespect her in their face constantly and consistently. They will not do it because you're not doing it. You have to have enough maturity, not even just spiritual maturity. You have to have enough maturity to understand and know that the reflection of your treatment and behavior to your Elohim is what other people are going to see, and therefore they will be a reflection of that themselves when you try to what's the word I'm looking for? When you try to encourage them or incite them to serve him as well, because you don't respect it. So they won't respect it. You know what I'm saying? You have to understand that. You have to know that. And then the next thing you say, because if you're walking in all those ways, let's look at the Hebrew word for walk here. Let's just look at it right here. We ain't in no rush. Y'all willing? We got 2 days. Well, 1 day, 2 times. Put it that way. And as an idiot, I went to the wrong chapter. So remember now, he wants you to walk in all his ways. He wants you to fear him. And just for clarity, so when we look at the word fear in this verse, it is Yerah, it is to fear, it is to revere, it is to be afraid, it is to stand in awe, to be awed, to be fearful, to cause astonishment, to inspire reverence or godly fear. So pause. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 12, just because that's it kind of mind. And after that, Psalms chapter 4. It's what he require you. I got to be quick with it, because I don't want to spend too much time on this here, because I ain't got a lot of time. Hebrews 12, 25. Hebrews 12 and 25. And the word says, see that you refuse him not that speak, for if they escape not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall we not escape if we turn away from him that speak from Shamahim, whose voice then shook the rats. But now he hath promised, saying, yet once more I shake not the rats only, but also Shamahim. And this word yet once more signify the removing of those things that are shaken, as of those things that are made, and those things which cannot be shaken may remain. Wherefore we receive a kingdom which cannot be moved. Let us have favor, whereby we may serve Elohim acceptably with reverence and godly fear, for our Elohim is a consuming fire. See, and that's the thing that be messing a lot of people up. Certain situations come on, and he's testing your motives. So you don't sit back and realize that every situation you go through, he said he tried to reins in the hearts. He is testing your motives. He is seeing what you are going to do. Because your motives are your motivations. What is your motives and motivation for doing the things that you do? Are your motives to fulfill your fleshly desires, and whatever fulfilling of your fleshly desires that may be? Or are your motives to please him? That is the question. Hello?
Hello.
How you doing? That's the question. What are your motives? What are your motives? Because he said, what does he require of you but that you fear Yahuwah Elohim? So if you fear this man, you should be serving him with godly fear, and you should not be moved. Meaning that nothing that happens to you should shake you from what you're supposed to be doing, because you will be rooted and set. Now, the thing that he's mentioned about being shaken, he's quoting a Psalms. The writer of Hebrew is quoting one of the Psalms. I'll show it to you since I said it. I believe it's Psalms 125. I believe it is Psalms 125. It is Psalms 125. Psalms 125 and 1. Just so y'all can know, he quoting the psalm, he quoting the word right there. So he says, they that trust in Yahuwah shall be as Mount Zion, which cannot be removed, but abide forever. As the mountains are round about Jerusalem, so is Yahuwah round about his people from henceforth even forever. For the rod of the wicked shall not rest upon the lot of the righteous, lest the righteous put forth their hands unto iniquity. Notice that he say the rod, the chastisement or the correction of the wicked won't fall on the righteous unless the righteous put their hands to sin. Then they have a problem. Do good, O Yahuwah, unto those that be good, and to them that are upright in their hearts. And as for such as turn aside unto their crooked ways, Yahuwah shall lead them forth with the workers of iniquity, but shalom shall be upon Yasharal. So if you trust in Yahuwah, you cannot be moved. So that meaning that there is nothing on this planet that should cause you to deviate from the word. And if you did, it's because you didn't trust in Yahuwah. And that's the bottom line, because the word says so. Not because that's my opinion, because he just said those that trust in Yahuwah cannot be moved. If you trust in Yah, you cannot be moved. And this is taking you back to your fear or your reverence or your respect for your Elohim, because this is what he requires of you in the law. So if you got moved from off of him, it's because you did not fully trust in him. There is no other way to explain it. And now we have to ask the question, why do we not trust in our Elohim as our mouth says we do, but our heart says we do not? Because that's the biggest problem. I done told you this before. That's the biggest problem amongst our people in the four corners of the earth. The trust in Yahuwah is lacking. And this is why people don't have power, Elohim. This is why people can't overcome their flesh. Because you don't really trust in him. You know what I'm saying? See, the thing that niggas fear is going to hell, but you don't really fear going to hell. Because if you feared going to hell, you would relinquish your will over to your Elohim and allow him to dictate your control, because you would be rooted firmly upon the word, and no man, woman, or child, situation, or circumstance could ever remove you from it. Because he's going to test your motives. When he say he try to reins in the hearts, it's because he has to test your motives. Even with his own son, he had to test his motives. What is your motivation? What is it that dictates your actions? Do you do this for a period of time until you get tested? Or do you do this because your love and your honor and your fear and your respect and your faith for me is so strong that you will endure any human circumstance, calamity, tribulation, persecution, and affliction for my name's sake, knowing that I'm a rewarder of those that diligently seek me, knowing that if you seek Yahuwah, you are sacrificing yourself to either enter into the door so you can enter into the house. Where are your motives located at? This is what he requires. So when we look at, when he say to walk in his ways, that word walk, as you should know, is your lot, and this is your manner of life. So he requires you. Remember now, he told you that a Mashiach is your life. Mashiach said he is the life and the resurrection, and whosoever believe in him will never taste death. He told you he the way, the truth, and the life. That is your manner of life. This is what he requires of you. And then the last thing he said was for you to serve him. For you to serve him with all your heart and all your soul. And that is a commandment of faith. And that work is avad, and that work means to labor. And this is the thing that I be talking about. The Shabbat is your labor in Elohim. Your obedience to anything that you do that this man requires is your labor. Are you diligent in your labor to Elohim, or are you slothful? Because you ain't slothful to Mr. Charlotte. You ain't slothful to your own business. Why are you slothful to the man who owns your whole entire life in the palm of his hand? You work for him. He owns you. He bought you. You are a lifelong slave and servant to the living Elohim. But yet we serve this man as if, shoot, it don't make no difference, and have more reverence to your earthly employer. Makes absolutely no sense. You know what I'm saying? But this is how we look at it. We don't look at your service to Elohim is literally your job. It is literally your job. What did the master say in Luke chapter 2? I must be about my father's business. This is my job. This is my occupation. This is your vocation. Just because you don't preach the word does not mean that is not your job. It is your job to serve your Elohim, because he paid for you and he has a binding contract for your employment. Verse 13, to keep the commandments of Yahuwah and his statutes, which I command thee this day, and that's Deuteronomy chapter 10. Behold, Shamahim, and Shamahim is Yahuwah the Elohims, the earth also with all that is therein is. Only Yahuwah had delight in thy fathers to love them. He chose their seed after them, even you above all people, as it is this day. Circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart, and be no more stiff-necked. For Yahuwah your Elohim is an Elohim of Elohims, and a master of masters, a great Elohim, a mighty and a terrible, which regard not persons, nor take reward. He doth execute the judgment of the fatherless and the widow, and love the stranger, and giving him food and raiment. Love ye therefore the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Mizraim. Thou shalt fear Yahuwah thy Elohim, him shalt thou serve, and to him shalt thou cleave, and swear by his name. He is thy praise, he is thy Elohim, that have done for thee these great and terrible things which thy eyes have seen. Thy fathers went down into Mizraim with 60 persons, and now Yahuwah thy Elohim made thee as the stars of Shamahim for multitude. He said he loved the stranger and the widow and the fatherless. And again, why does he mention those three consistently together all the time? Because they don't have someone to stand up for them. This is why he said you better not afflict the fatherless or the widow. That's why he said you better not vex the stranger, because my wrath will wax hot and I will slay you if they cry to me. You know what I'm saying? You have to sit back and look at it. A fatherless child don't have anyone to stand up on their behalf. A widow don't have any man to stand up in the... See, let me show you why I say that. Isaiah 59. Just Isaiah 59. See, somebody got to be able to stand up in the gap for him. So since man wouldn't do it, he said he'd do it. He said wasn't nobody to plead judgment or plead they call. He said, don't worry about it. I'll do it. Isaiah 59:12. He said, for our transgressions and our sins, our transgressions are multiplied before thee, and our sins testify against us. For our transgressions are with us, and as for our iniquities, we know them. and transgressing and lying against Yahuwah and departing away from our Elohim, speaking oppression and revolt, conceiving and uttering from the heart words of falsehood. And judgment is turned away backward, and justice stand afar off. For truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter. Yea, truth fail, and he that depart from evil make himself a prey. And Yahuwah saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment. And he saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore his arm brought salvation unto him, and his righteousness it sustained him. There was no arm, there was no intercessor, there was nobody to stand up and plead on the behalf of the truth. We say truth fail and fall in the street. The firmness, the soundness, the faithfulness of Elohim. Because if we were the people of the book, see, this is the part to sit back and look at, right? If we the people of the book, then we supposed to understand how we supposed to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. There's a reason why Ecclesiastes 7:7, if I'm not mistaken, say, surely oppression make a wise man mad. So you wouldn't be cool with someone oppressing someone or afflicting someone who cannot stand up and defend themselves. Now, the one of the things why they say, okay, you shouldn't afflict the widow. Now, we know a widow is a woman whose husband had died. But as a man, you shouldn't be down with any man afflicting any woman at any time. That you should stand up on her behalf. We ain't talking about two lovers, two husband and a wife having a spat. You know what I'm talking about? Unless he get out of pockets. If they argue, that's between them. Whatever they arguing about. You know what I'm saying? That's none of your personal business. But if he go to cussing this woman, calling this woman out of her name, threatening this woman, or going to get physical with this woman, then you're supposed to stand up in the gap on her behalf as a man of righteousness. You ain't supposed to let that slide. You're not supposed to let that slide and be like, shoot, that's between them. Because he's oppressing this person at this particular time. You should have a problem with that. You should have a problem with that. You know what I'm saying? You should have a problem if someone does it to a child. Clearly you should have a problem if somebody do it to a child. I don't even know how you could sit back and see somebody afflict and persecute a child and just turn your head. Nevertheless, what's the next step we got to go to with this here, man? What's the direction that I need to go with this here? So the fathers. What?
I said go left.
This nigga here crazy. So when we sit back and look at this here, right, because we tie this to a Mashak being a father's child. So we definitely have to show forth how that happened. Let's go to the prophet Habakkuk. I don't never pronounce his name correctly. And let's go to chapter 1.
Tobacco?
Yeah, tobacco, whatever you want to call it. I can't say it. 1:1. And then after that we go to Exodus 23. Because you should know what judgment is. And wrong judgment seems to proceed all the time. And people usually judge wrong because they don't know the word. And people just flat out stupid. You know what I'm saying? People like to judge as they see fit. You should always remember that judgment is mishpat. And that's your act of deciding a case. Right, privilege, proper fitting, custom, your manner, your plan, what is right. You should be able, remember we talked about this. The reason why more people can't judge what is right is because they're not keeping the word. Therefore, because they're not keeping the word and not actually doing it, you can't determine right from wrong, which is why a lot of people get shaken and moved because you didn't really believe in the first place. And this is why you weren't able to tell right from wrong. 1:1. The burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see, O Yahuwah, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear, even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save? Why dost thou show me iniquity and cause me to behold grievance? For spoiling and violence are before me, and there are that raise up strife and contention. Therefore the law is slacked, and judgment doth never go forth. For the wicked doth compass the righteous, therefore wrong judgment proceed. See, that's the most ugly thing. He said right there, he said the wicked are compassing the righteous, and therefore the wrong judgment proceed. When we sit back and we look at slack, the law is slack, it says to become feeble or faint. It's become weak. The law has become weak, so therefore judgment can't go forth. Why has the law become weak that judgment can't go forth? Why has wrong judgment proceeds? Well, let's look and see. Let's look and see. This is what I'm looking for. Romans chapter 8 and verse 1. Romans 8 and 1. There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Yahushua HaMashiach, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Ruach. For the Torah of the Ruach of life and Yahushua HaMashiach have made me free from the Torah of sin and death. For what the Torah could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, Elohim sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the Torah might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the Ruach. They that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Ruach, the things of the Ruach. And that's the question you got to ask yourself. Because see, we talked about this last week. Some of y'all hit home a little well, and some of you didn't, just on the answers that were given. About looking at, okay, what do you say defines this person and what defines yourself? You know, some things were descriptive terms, really more adjectives. Because what defines you, you're really defined by the things that you do. It's really what you're defined by, is what you do. The reason why I mention that is because he say those that are after the flesh mind the things of the flesh. Those who do fleshly things are clearly going to go after the things that are of the flesh, because carnal things define you, because this is what you do. Those who have a mind of the Ruach, they're going to be defined by the Ruach, because those are the things that they do. And those are the things that they go after. If you pay attention, the reason you're, and I'm going to reiterate this again on Shabbat, y'all will, I'm live, and all of us alive. The point of the matter of you looking at the things that define you, and if you were being sincerely honest with yourself, and if others were also, is, do the things that define you, do they line up with the definition of who Elohim is? You know what I'm saying? Do they line up with the definition? Do they line up with the things and the principles that he says that he is about? Because if you don't have the things that line up with who he is and what he is about, then that means that maybe the law is slack in your inward parts. Meaning it's feeble, it's weak, it's not strong inside of you. Therefore, the manifestation of the definition of Elohim is not showing forth in your character, meaning in your conduct, because the abundance of the heart, the mouth speak. It's not what goes into man that defile him, but what comes out. Because the things that come out of man begin within his heart. Meaning your actions are going to be dictated by what is in your thoughts. This is what dictates your actions. You know what I'm saying? So you want your thoughts to be defined by the word of Elohim. Therefore, your actions are defined by the word of Elohim. Therefore, you are defined by the word of Elohim. Nevertheless, he said that the law was slacked, and the wrong judgment went forth because it was weak in the flesh. Therefore, the things that are right could not be accomplished. Let's look at something in Job chapter 6, verse 23. Make sure that's what I want. I gotta pick up the pace. I'm around here moving and grooving like I got all night. Yeah, Job 6 and 23. And that's the only add-on I'm going to use before I get ready to close this one out. And y'all willing, I just have to pick it up later. Job 6 and 23. Make it about 18 is cool. The path of their way are turned aside. They go to nothing and perish. The troops of Timar looked. The companies of Sheba waited for them. They were confounded because they had hoped. They came thither and were ashamed. For now ye are nothing, and you see my casting down and are afraid. For now ye are nothing, and you see my casting down and are afraid. But did I say bring unto me, or give a reward for me of your substance, or deliver me from the enemy's hand, or redeem me from the hand of the mighty? Teach me, and I will hold my tongue, and cause me to understand wherein I have erred. How forcible are right words, But what doth your arguing reprove? Now, when he say how forcible are right words, dang, I hate this thing when I do this. That's why I always have it up. Let's look at something with this word forcible. That word is maratz. It is to make sick, grievous, or painful, sore. Say, how painful are right words? But what doth your arguing reprove? He said, do you imagine to reprove words in the speeches of one that is desperate, which are as wind? Ye overwhelm the fatherless, and you dig a pit for your friend. Now therefore be content, look upon me, for it is evident unto you if I lie. Return, I pray you, let it not be iniquity. Yea, return again, my righteousness is in it. Is there an iniquity in my tongue? Cannot my taste discern perverse things? Well, let's turn it back and look at it now. Let's get full understanding to get all the way to did this here, because this is how we're going to tie it in about them afflicting the fathers. And then when they cry unto him, he bring a sword and murk them and make them fatherless. Nevertheless, let's look at it. We started at verse 17, but verse 17 ain't what we want to look at. He said, you were nothing, for now you are nothing. You see my casting down, now you scared. When we look at casting down, that word is kahath, and that is terror. You seen my terror, and now you are afraid. And now they want to reverence, they want to fear now. They seen his terror, and now they're afraid. Well, let's look at his terror and see why they're afraid. Mark 15. Let's look at their terror. Now let's see why they scared. Why they a little nervous. Because they seen his terror. Ooh, boy, Mark chapter 15. And I know I mentioned Psalms 4 too. About that, and that's Psalm 4 and 4. Stand in awe and commune with your own heart. You should be in awe of the awesomeness of Elohim in every aspect of life. You should be in awe when you see a baby being born. You should be in awe when you see a flower bloom. You should be in awe when you see a bee pollinate with said flower. You should be in awe when you see a thunderstorm. You should be in awe when you see the blue skies. You should be in awe at any and everything. You should be in awe looking at the inner workings of your own body. You should be in awe that of all the people in this dispensation of time, that he is manifested on the face of the earth, that he has allowed you to know of him for the purpose of saving your soul. You should be in awe at that. Now will we neglect such a greater salvation as this for stupidity and carnal desires? It makes no sense. Makes no sense. But let's look at his terror. Where do we want to begin? Mark 15 and 30. Let's begin there. Save thyself and come down from the stake. Likewise also the chief priests mocking said among themselves with the scribes, he saved others, himself he cannot save. Let Mashiach the Malach of Yasharal descend now from the stake, that we may see and believe. And they that were crucified with him reviled him. When the 6th hour was come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour Yahushua cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is interpreted, my Elohim, why hast thou forsaken me? And some of them that stood by when they heard it said, behold, he called Elijah. And one ran and filled a sponge full of vinegar and put it on a reed and gave him to drink, saying, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down. Yahushua cried with a loud voice and gave up the ruach. And the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. And when the centurion which stood over against him saw that he so cried out and gave up the ruach, he said, truly this man was the son of Elohim. Now he said, for now ye are nothing. And when we look at this word nothing, the word is ra'ah. And it is to see, it is to look, it is to perceive, it is to consider, it is to gaze at, it is to be visible, it is to observe, it is to watch, it is to learn about, it is to be exhibited. So he say, now you see my terror, and now you're afraid. Now they give respect. You sit back and you see this Roman centurion, because remember, he's crying out. And if you remember, we didn't read the verse. That's what I actually went to Habakkuk 4. He said his eyes were too pure to look upon evil. You know what I'm saying? I want to say that's about verse 8 or 9. But let me get that for clarification's sake, to be as accurate as possible. Let me pull that correct verse for y'all. That is verse 13. Thou art of pure eyes, and to behold evil, and cannot look upon iniquity. Wherefore thou look upon them that deal treacherously, and hold thy tongue when the wicked devour the man that is more righteous than he. And remember, he said that the wicked, and earlier in that chapter that we read, have encompassed or circled the righteous. You know that happened with the people with the swords and the staves encircling the Mashiach. You know when this happened. You also know that this will happen again, because we didn't get to that part, and that was my mistake, on Shabbat, dealing with the widow and them encircling Jerusalem and afflicting her, and then him standing up on her behalf and fighting for her. The same way that you look at that you are a father, you have to sit back and look at it. Yasharal, for a certain extent, is a fatherless child. Just like Hamashiach was a fatherless child, because he said, if you commit sin, you of your father the devil. So because Hamashiach became iniquity for our sakes, he becomes fatherless because now Yahuwah cannot be his father. He has to turn. I don't have a son. He has separated himself from him. Now he is crying out. We got to sit back and look at it at the same token. Yahusha is not unrighteous. The people who are encircling someone who is more righteous than them. The reason why we sit back and look at this is that remember, he said that he's poured out the spirit upon your heart. The spirit of his son is in your heart, that you might cry out, Abba, Father. So you turn around and you look at it, right? While of course, he's our father, but when you look at it in this aspect, you taking on the Mashiach. He is in you and you are in him. And you're suffering afflictions and persecutions for his name's sake, and you have to suffer what he had to deal with. And when these people circle around you, persecute you and afflict you, and whatever situation or circumstance, it ain't got to be this old, extra stuff, FEMA camps and all this stuff these niggas be screaming and hollering about, you know what I'm saying, terrified of death because they fear man and trust not in Elohim. That's why they concerned with all this stuff under the guise that got to be prepared. Prepare your heart to meet your maker instead of trying to prepare to survive a blackout or martial law. So what, you survive martial law and a blackout and you go to hell? What good preparation was that? That's how stupid and retarded niggas is. You can survive the blackout, but you ain't gonna survive the late. But I got through the blackout, stupid bastard. You know what I'm saying? That's idiocy at the highest level. It's idiocy at the highest level. Do not be an idiot. Prepare to meet your maker. That's what you got to prepare for first. Don't prepare to survive natural disasters and human machinations, and you're not prepared to survive the wrath of your Elohim. What type of sense does that make? It makes none. Absolutely none. Nevertheless, so when they circle you about and seek to oppress you and do that, and you cry out to him in supplication and prayer, he's going to defend you. And you have to understand that. He's a man of his word. He said he execute judgment on behalf of the fatherless, the widow, and the stranger. We already read this in the law. So hold on, I mentioned one more other place in the law. We ain't got it yet. Exodus 23. Exodus chapter 23 and verse 7. Matter of fact, verse 6. Thou shalt not rest the judgment of thy poor in his cause. Keep thee far from a false matter, and the innocent and the righteous slay thou not, for I will not justify the wicked. Thou shalt take no gift, for the gift blind the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. Also thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, seeing you were strangers in the land of Mizraim. That man dead serious about that, not oppressing a stranger. He said it too many times, because you know it. See, that's the stuff we sit back and look at. How could you go through a situation of, you know what it's like to be hungry, but you don't feed the hungry? You know what it's like to be naked, but you don't clothe the naked? See, that's a problem. See, let's look at something in James chapter 1 of what he need to tell you need to do as we continue to go through this Job chapter 6. Matter of fact, let's just finish that Job chapter 6. I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm running out of time. So, as we look at what verse 21 is telling us about, verse 21 is telling us about how that Roman centurion beheld the majesty of Elohim, the terror or the fear or the reverence or respect that Yahushua had for his father. He saw it. He saw it. When we look at verse 22, did he say, did I say bring, and we're in Job chapter 6, did I say bring unto me or give a reward of me of your substance? That's a bribe or a ransom. And we just kind of cross-reference that with the law. Don't take no bribe. We seen that when the adversary tried to bribe Mashiach for his worship. He didn't ask, he didn't want any bribe from you. He didn't want any ransom from you. He said he came to be a ransom for many. This is the same thing Samuel said. Samuel said, I haven't took anything from you. Same thing Paul mentioned in 1 Corinthians 9, that the gospel of Yahushua HaMashiach can be preached without blame and without price. Nevertheless, verse 23 says, or deliver me from the enemy's hand, or redeem me from the hand of the mighty. Now he's asking, did I ask you to deliver me? That word deliver is malat, is to slip away or to escape. Did Mashiach ask Pilate to save him? Or did Pilate say, don't you know I have power to release you? This is John chapter 19, and Mashiach said, you had no power at all except if forgiven you from on high. Did he not heal that man's ear and told Peter, put that sword up? For I can pray unto my fathers for 12 legions of Malachim. But how else will the scriptures be fulfilled? He did not ask anybody to redeem him or save him, other than him who had power to redeem and to save. He didn't ask any man to do it. Then he say, teach me and I will hold my tongue, and cause me to understand where I have erred. And that take us back to when they struck him. And he said, if I spoke wrong, then fine. But if not, what did you hit me for? Let me know where I have erred at. The next thing he said, how forcible are right words, and what point is your proving. And remember that forcible is how grievous are right words. How painful are words that are right. See, that take us back to when in the book of Ezekiel, when he said he ate the roll and it was bitter to his taste. Actually, that's not the book of Ezekiel. Revelation 10. My apologies. That's not the book of Ezekiel. Revelation chapter 10 and verse 1. Praise Yah for the word. We finna get ready to wrap up. Revelation 10 and 1. Revelation 10 and 1. And it says, and I saw another mighty Malachim come down from Shamahim, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. And he had in his hand a little book open. He set his right foot upon the sea and his left foot on the earth. And when he cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roar, and when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. And when the 7 thunders had uttered their voices, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from Shamahim saying unto me, seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not. And the Malachim which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to Shamahim. We got to drop down that. We're going to read all that. Verse 8. Well, matter of fact, I'll go ahead and do it. It ain't going to kill nothing. Hello, potty. And the Malachim which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to Shamahim, and swear by him that live forever and ever, come here, Leah, who created Shamahim and the things that are thereon are, and the earth and the things that are, and the sea, no, come here, and the things which are therein, that there should be time no longer. But in the days of the voice of the seven Malachim, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of Elohim should be finished, as he has declared to his servants the prophets. And the voice which I heard from Shamahim spake unto me again, said, go take the little book which is open in the hand of the Malachim, which stand upon the sea and upon their rats. And when I went unto the Malachim and said unto him, give me the little book, he said unto me, take, eat, and eat it up. But it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey. And I took the little book out of the Malachim's hand and ate it up, and it was in my mouth sweet as honey. And as soon as I had eaten it, it made my belly bitter. Why did it make your belly bitter? Because he said that how grievous are right words. Why are right words grievous? Because this right here, right? And another word for right in this verse is yosher. and that is straightness or uprightness. Why are those words grievous to a man? You know, the book says, you know, through much knowledge and much wisdom comes sorrow. Let's look at that. Ecclesiastes. Because it takes you back to that proverb where it say, you know, the wounds are the stripes of the belly. And it takes you back to that chastisement. You know what I'm saying? Because those correct words seem to be grievous unto you, because it's restricting your carnal nature in your flesh. And your flesh does not want to be restricted. We didn't read that verse in Romans 8, but it says that the carnal mind is enmity against the Torah of Elohim and is not subject to it, neither indeed can be. Therefore, correct words will be grievous. Right words or upright words will be grievous to the carnal nature, which takes us back to why the law has been made slack or feeble or weak. That's why he had to send his son in the likeness of sinful flesh to destroy the flesh. Hello, Muffin.
I want bread.
You want what?
I want bread.
I don't have any bread, so I will not be able to accommodate you in that request.
Look, soccer ball.
Where was I going? Oh yeah, Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Abria, no noise. And that's not a soccer ball, that is a basketball.
What are her doing?
You're going to sit down. That's what you're going to do.
We are going to sit down.
Yes, you're going to sit down.
What? Nana.
Yeah.
We all.
Shh. Ecclesiastes 2 and 21. For there is a man whose labor is in wisdom and in knowledge and in equity, yet to a man that have not labored therein shall he leave it for his portion. This also is vanity and a great evil. For what hath man all of his labor and of the vexation of his heart, wherein he have labored under the sun? For all his days are sorrows, and his travail grief, yet his heart take no rest in the night. This also is vanity. You know, with much wisdom and much knowledge and all this stuff, it can bring grief. And what is that grief? Hebrews chapter 12. See, because at this point you are following this child until you come into this correction. Praise Yah for the word. Children, I can hear you. I don't want to hear you. 12 and 5. And you have forgotten the exhortation which speak unto you as children. My son, despise not the chastening of Yahuwah, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom Yahuwah loved, he chastened and scourged every son whom he received. If you endure chastening, Elohim deal with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the father chastened not? But if you be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then you are bastards and not sons. Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Abba of Ruachs and live? For they truly for a few days chastened us after their own pleasure, but he after our profit, that we might be partakers of his kadoshness. Now no chastening for the present seemed to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterwards it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. So what do we end up seeing? Because what is he going to chasten you with? Psalms 94 and 12. Baruch to those whom thou chasten out of thy Torah. He is going to correct you and chasten you with his word. So therefore, how forcible are right words, or how grievous are correct words, but what doth your arguing reprove? So it's his words that tend to be grievous unto that carnal nature. And you have to be able to allow that to not supersede what he just said. He said it doesn't seem joyous but grievous, but if you endure it, then you're no longer a bastard, but you're a son. Now you have a father. Nevertheless, let's look at the next thing. He said, do you imagine to reprove, this is Job 6 and 26, to reprove words in the speeches of one that is desperate, which are as wind? He said, you overwhelm the fatherless and you dig a pit for your friend. Let's look at the word for overwhelm. The word for overwhelm is nafal, and that is to cast someone down and to throw them down. That's what that means. You dig a pit for your friend, I think you know what that is. And that's to dig a grave for them. So let's see them throw down, overwhelm the fatherless, and dig a pit for their friend. And then we'll sit back, and we've already kind of looked to sit back and seen how the fatherless cried out to him, and he heard him. Actually, we don't have to, because y'all know the instances and the places. You know that the scribes and Pharisees plotted. You know that they did it. You know that they dug a pit or set up an opportunity to kill Yahushua HaMashiach. Ariel and Leah. Quiet. Y'all know that they did this. You know that Judas is the one who digged the pit for his friend. Now let's go back and look at Exodus 22 one more time. In Exodus chapter 22, he says that you shall not afflict, this is 22 and 22, you shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child, and if you afflict them and they cry, he will hear their cry, and his wrath will wax hot, and he'll kill you with the sword, and your children will be fatherless, and your wives will be widows. Now let's sit back and let's gain some understanding, and let's look at this from this aspect. We look at all the places in the law where he say he will not pervert the judgment of the righteous or judgment of the stranger and the fatherless, and that if anybody does so, that they are sinning. He said he will stand up and he will plead for them. He will plead their cause. He will stand up in the gap for them. So he love to do it. So now we got to sit back and look at it of another instance and reason why he stood up on behalf to execute judgment for his son by resurrecting him from the dead. We know that Hebrews 5, starting by verse 7, say we know that Mashiach was heard and that he feared, and he learned obedience from the things that he suffered. So those things that he suffered were grievous unto him, but they yield the peaceable fruit of righteousness, because those words were straight and made him upright, which in turn can make us upright if we obey and follow him and go from being a fatherless children to having a father. Because you got to remember, he said that he told you in the book of Hosea that you are not my people and I am not your Elohim. Therefore, you are a fatherless child. Same way that when Mashiach became sin, he told him, I'm not your Elohim and you are not my people. You're not my son at this particular time for the purpose of executing the sacrifice, because if not, Yahuwah has to stand up on his behalf and intercede to stop them from killing him, because he will not allow you to justify the slay and kill the righteous over the wicked and with incorrect judgment. But he allowed them to slay him for the purpose of him resurrecting him to justify him at the last, so we could be justified at the last. That this it says in the first epistle of John, the 3rd chapter and the 1st verse, what manner of love hath the Father bestowed upon us that we should be called the sons of Elohim. Just what you have to look at this here. This is the love of Elohim reflected in him and him coming through, delivering his son who had been afflicted. We know he cried out to him. We could read Luke where he say, Father, in thy hands I commend thy Ruach. We read, my Elohim, why have you forsaken me? He cried out unto him. He heard him. Also, we've dealt in the past that his blood falling on the ground. It's the same as what it said in the law with Cain, with Abel, I should say, where it said that his blood cried out to Elohim, and it says in Hebrews 11 that it was a more perfect witness coming later. That Yahushua's blood cried out then, he heard. If you were under that and you were in him and he is in you, then that same cry is coming into the ears of the Father who dwells on high, and he will defend and stand up for you, and he will slay them with the sword, because it says anger will wax hot. And let's see where they slay them with the sword, and then we will depart. Revelation 19. And 11. And I saw Shamahim opened and sat, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. And his eyes was a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, and he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Elohim. And the armies which were in Shamahim followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, and out of his mouth go a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and that he should rule them, hello Lizzie, with a rod of iron, and tread the winepress of the fierceness. Quiet. and the fierceness and wrath of Almighty Elohim. And he have on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, Malach of Malachs and Master of Masters. So with that being said, you know that he's going to come back and slay them all, because they afflicted his father's child, and his anger is going to wax hot. And there's many other aspects of that we could touch. Y'all willing, we get it on the Shabbat, because we're at our end of our time. So hallelujah for Yahusha and the word. We'll stop it right there. Yes, Martha.